What's up, guy? In this second part of our project, as I told you in the first one, we are going to transform this web application into a desktop application. And you can see here, it's still a web application. I'll just show you. Just click here. See, it will spin up a web browser. And you can see here, it's still a web application. But now we are going to transform this app into a desktop application. And I'll just close here. And when you want to transform this app into a desktop application, first of all, we'll we'll open a terminal, go in our terminal, and just wait a minute. And you can see here we are in our current directory. First step will be to create a package.json. And to create that, you'll just write npm space init dash y, then press enter. You will see it will create a package.json, and this package will contain the name of all the dependency we are going to use to create our desktop application. And the first dependency is the framework or the library, which is a Electron. And to install a dependency, you just need to write npm as you just dash dash save dash dev, because it is a dev dependency Electron. Then I'll press enter. What happened? I made a small mistake as I was writing in RE. Normally you should put I or install I, or you can just write install. Then press enter. Just press enter. Now our installation will start, and we'll just wait for it to finish, then we'll continue with the next part. And you can see while it's installing the node module, which will contain all the dependency we are going to use. Already finished. And when we want to create a desktop application, normally we need 3 files. We should add 3 JS file here. And the first one we are going to create is main.js. This main.js is responsible for creating the window, and is also responsible for getting the access to the file system, because here we will restrict the script.js to access all the things related to the file system. We want only this main window to access the operating system, like the file system and all the things related to the operating system. But we don't want the script.js. And normally in many Electron project, normally they call it, I'll just rename it, because you can call it as script.js, but many of the time they call it render.js, because this one like our front end, render.js. I'll just call it render.js, and I'll press enter. Then this one, as you know, all our code, all our front-end code, like manipulating the DOM, is in this render, is like our front-end. But we already create this main.js. I told you this one is responsible to spin up, to create the window, the size of the window. All the code will be here. And is also responsible for accessing the file system, this one. But here also will restrict the render.js to access the file system and the operating system. We want this one to manipulate only the DOM. We don't want it to access like the file system and all other functionality related to the to the all the functionality related like to the operating system and stuff. We want it only to access the front-end stuff. But we need also to create a preload.js. Let's write it, preload.js. And this one is responsible for creating the bridge between these two, between the main and the render. As I told you, this this render.js will not be able to access the, for example, later we'll have a database, or we may want to create a JSON file. This render.js will not be able to access the JSON, but this preload, that only, as I told you, only the main.js will be able to access, to create maybe a JSON file or to access the database. But this render.js will not be able to do that. Will restrict this file to access the database and all things related to the file system or the operating system. But if, for example, we want like to insert some element in the database, or to read a file, or to write a file, or to delete a file, or to write some element in the database, will not be able to do that directly from this render.js. For that, we need a preload. A preload act like a bridge between the main, which will actually access the database, will take the data in the database, or will create a file, and the preload will be able to access this the method which will be exposed by the main through Electron, and the render will be uh, will be able, from the API of this preload, will be able to access the data or the data or the functionality which was exposed by the main via this preload.js. So that's how Electron normally work. We have a main which is responsible for accessing the operating system or the database. Then it will expose the method which we want the render to access, and it will expose those methods, and the render will be able to access or to manipulate those methods only via this preload.js. So this preload.js act like a bridge, it will expose a method which render will be able to use via an API. So I think you get an overview of what we are going to do. In the next video, we'll start with a main.js. As I told you, I will write the code, then I will explain it to you, because all this code I will put it later on my GitHub. You'll be able to download it and play with it in your side. But here I'll just provide the explanation because, as I told you, what is important is not typing the code. I can type the code. It's not what is important for me. For me, what is important is to make you understand what the code is doing, or what the code want to achieve. Yes, in the next video, I'll start with the explanation of all the code we are gonna write here in this main.js. Yes, see you next. What's up, guy? In this video, I will explain to you the code what we have in our main.js, and you can see here. Last time I wrote render.js, but I correct, is render.js. And in our main.js, you can see, first of all, we require Electron, and in Electron we want to get this browser window, which will help us create a window and the app, which I'll explain a little bit later. And we declare a variable here, main window, and we create a function. This function will help us create a desktop window. And inside this function, I just write new.browser window. This will return a new object window, which will be stored in our main window. And I give some settings to this object, this window. And the first property what I'm giving is I want the window to have the width of 1100, and I want its height to be 800, and web preferences. And here is this part control how the render process work inside the window. And this object, you can see the first key here is equal to path.join, and we give dash dash underscore underscore dir name. This give us the current directory or the current folder, and preload.js, this file. And this tell to Electron to run this preload.js before the page loads this line. And preload is this also expose selected node and electron feature to the front end, this line, to the render.js. And control isolation, we set it to true, because this is a security setting. It keeps preload file, this file, separate from the web page context. That means we don't want to mix the preload function with our render function. So that's why we set our context isolation to true. And last but not the least is node integration. We set it to false. Here we are just preventing our render file to access the nodes function. For example, we don't want, we don't want here like to require, file system. We don't want this render.js to access all nodes functionality directly. We don't want that. If you understand well, is only preload no, not even preload, only the main.js which will access the node methods, like creating a database, creating a file, and only this main.js will have that authority, that privilege, and will create, and preload will uh, will get that function and will expose it to the rand.js. I think you get an idea of what we are going to do. Yes. Yes. Then in our main window, dot load file will load the index.html, this file. We want when the window will pops up to contain this index.html file, and app dot when ready, we call the function which we already we created here, and we want when Electron will be ready to call this function, and this function will create a window. And finally, app.on, here we trigger an event, close all, window all closed. Here we are checking if we are not on Mac OS, because when you are on Mac OS, even when you close all the window, the app will be still running. Yes, I think that's all for this main .js. Then we'll go in our package.json, and here instead of script.js, as the name of our main window is main.js, we'll change the name. Instead of script, we'll just write main, and here just write start. Then inside here just write electron dot, and this will when we run the script, it will open the window. And if you remember, before this file we used to call it script.js, but I changed the name to render.js. For that, I should go in our index.html to change the name, because here is still script, still keep the name that it had before. So we should just write render.js. Yes, before running this code, I see that here I use path. Because I've run this code, I get a small error. I want to correct it with you. You know, when you use path, even if it is an internal module of Node.js, JavaScript still needs you to import it. So we forgot that line, so we need to add it here. Yes, I think that now we can go in our terminal. Before running the code, as I told you, here in script.js, you should write start electron space dot. Then go in the terminal, just write npm start. Normally, here the window, you can see here, now we have a desktop application. We load in our main window, as I told you, the HTML file, and as you know, in our front end, we did this UI, we put this CSS and HTML, and now we load it in our main window, the window which Electron serves to us, and we load at this line. I will go in main.js, and you see here we load this index.html. That's why you are seeing this beautiful UI. And I think that That's it. Now you can, we have transformed this front-end web application into a desktop application. And the next step, as I told you, we will save, or we will save this data, we'll persist this data as a JSON, then later we'll persist it uh, using SQLite, which is now a module of Node.js. Yes, try to do it in your side. Try to run and see if you'll get any bug, and try to correct the bug. Most of the time, you may miss a line, or don't worry, just try to check your code. And at the end, I will provide this code on my GitHub. You'll just run it in your side. I think everything will will work the same as in my VS code. So we just need to understand how things are working. Yes, my friend. See you next.